Welcome to the Emergency Mind Podcast. I'm Dan Dworkis, and this is a space where we train ourselves to think and perform better during times of crisis. ER doctors or not, we all face emergencies in our lives, and this podcast is all about getting better at acting during times of uncertainty and stress and learning how to apply knowledge under pressure. So listen up, train hard, and enjoy, because you never know what's coming your way next. To learn more about building your emergency mind and to dig deeper into many of the concepts we get into in this podcast series, head over to our website at emergencymind.com. In this episode, we're stepping out of the emergency department and into the world of mixed martial arts. We're talking with Coach Pete Panos, the owner and head coach at UPRISE MMA, a mixed martial arts gym in the Mar Vista area of Los Angeles, California. You can find UPRISE MMA on the web at uprisemma.com. That's UPRISE MMA.com. Coach Pete is a practitioner as well as an instructor in both striking and grappling, and he's somebody I've been lucky to train with during my time in Los Angeles. We cover some great topics in this episode, including how fighters need to stay calm in the middle of a fight, how we all need to take responsibility for being a lifelong learner, and the importance of combining yin and yang in physical and mental practices together for growth. Speaking of balancing yin and yang, we recorded this episode in a new art and music venue called Art Bar LA that Coach Pete helped open right next to the martial arts school. You can find it online at artbarla.com. Martial artist, emergency doctor, or anything else, there's great stuff in this episode for you. As always on this podcast, our mission is to dive into applying knowledge under pressure, not to provide specific medical advice. Additionally, our opinions are our own and not those of our respective employers. All that said, let's get to the episode. I hope you enjoy. Really happy to have you here today talking about this.
Pleasure to be here.
I think there's a lot of really cool connections between martial arts and thinking under pressure and functioning during emergencies, and been really looking forward to the chance to sit down with you and dig into it.
Awesome. Excited to be here.
Right on. So why don't we get started? Can you tell us a little bit about your background? How did you get into martial arts? What really brought you into that world?
I think like most older martial artists today, for me it started as a kid. The Sunday morning kung fu films I used to watch on Sundays. Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan films that were big in the late 70s when I was a child. Found myself in the backyard throwing Chinese stars at my friends and them throwing Chinese stars at me and getting a set of nunchakas and bashing my elbows and finding foams and trying to do flips and stuff, and progressed from that into the 80s, seeing like the Van Damme movies and just that whole Hollywood thing, but traditional martial arts. And back then, finding a martial art gym or an instructor to train with was a difficult task. I lived in the Midwest, grew up outside Chicago. There was some traditional schools. You had a Taekwondo, karate school, but there was no MMA schools or jiu-jitsu schools, Muay Thai academies or anything like that. I find myself just watching those movies or trying to get my hands on a VHS tape and trying to watch the technique and just goofing around with my friends until probably late high school. I was always an athlete, always played sports. And then about 18, 19, I started getting into American boxing. I met a Coach Mickey, started working with him in boxing. And then that just went from boxing. I started messing around with some guys who were kicking, karate guys, Taekwondo guys, and I saw like, wow, I need to know more than just how to kick. Yeah. I mean, how to punch, because they're kicking me. And then the same thing happened with the striking and grappling to jiu-jitsu, because I got pretty good at the striking, and then wrestler and grapplers took me to the ground. I realized I didn't know what I was doing there either, and it just was one thing kind of led to another, chaining it all together to kind of get to where I am today, where we study and teach mixed martial arts. But awesome. Yeah, I guess for me it was all just the influences of those late 70s, 80s Hollywood Chinese movies.
Yeah, and throwing ninja stars at each other. Hopefully you never get hit by one of those.
No, we as bad as our aim was, we would throw it when my friend would be running across the wooden gate. It was more to see if the Chinese star would stick in the fence. But it was kind of ridiculous now that I think about it.
Well, that's awesome. So, and at what point in your life did you realize that this was sort of more than a hobby for you, that this was part of sort of like the fabric of who you were? And I guess I'm projecting a little bit because it's what it seems like it is for you. But
yeah, I mean, obviously it was a progression over time. I mean, I never thought about making a living off of martial arts. Like I said, being a little older, people weren't really making money off martial arts unless you were doing film or you were a professional boxer or doing like back then it was called WWF, like that type of wrestling. So for me, it was just a sport and a hobby that I was passionate about because it was fun. And I was kind of, I wasn't a big kid. I was average size, and, you always saw in the movies that you could defend yourself against a bunch of people or bigger people, and it didn't matter what would happen. You could handle yourself in the situation if you knew how to defend yourself or protect yourself. So like most kids back then or even today that want to learn how to protect myself and build confidence and all that stuff. And like I said, I was always into sports, so it was just another transgression for me to go from, like American sports, baseball, football, basketball, into the martial arts. And so it just kind of happened that way, and I did it for fun. I did it as a serious hobby. I did it as competition, and then now it's actually a business. So
yeah, and some days you choke your students out like me, and then you sit on a podcast with them and talk about life. It's a good progression. Yeah.
That's the fun part,
right? And when did you start first getting into the more sort of mental aspects of martial arts? Because I think that one thing that really sets martial arts apart in a lot of ways from other sort of random athletic endeavors is the understanding that, yeah, you're throwing punches and kicks, but you're doing that as you're sort of working on yourself. And there's this rich history in the martial arts, back to Funakoshi, right? Who talks a lot about how karate and martial arts is really about building yourself. What was your entry into that?
I always had an interest in that. I'm not sure that's the norm, but I was always interested in history of things. My parents are Greek immigrants, and they always taught me about the history of Greece and know your history. So whatever I got into, I want to know kind of the backstory of it. And it's such a rich history of martial arts. And besides the martial arts, when I was young, I separated the two. I started with, I guess, a traditional martial art after boxing was a southern style of kung fu called Hungar with Sifu Buksam Kong. And I would do that as a physical workout, but then I would go and meditate and read books about, philosophies and Buddhism and Tao Te Ching and all the stuff that was interesting to me. And I didn't really put the two together. I thought they were kind of separate. I thought, okay, I do martial arts as my yang, and my yin will be to meditate and do stuff. And then I realized over time, and I've been doing martial arts over 30 years, that they're really interconnected. They're really one. And as chaotic as fighting may look to somebody, you see two people on the ground punching each other, choking each other, you realize there's like this calm inside that tornado that's happening. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing. If they were so blurred by the confusion and chaos of it, they wouldn't be able to go for an armbar, go for a punch, escape, get back to their feet, whatever it is their technique they're trying to execute. And I think that comes from, as crazy as it seems, staying calm in the moment. And I think a lot of that has to do with it's such a fast-paced sport. Look, whether it's basketball or fighting, things are happening so quickly. If you're thinking about something else, you're not going to be able to do your job properly. You're going to get hurt, or you're not going to perform well. And it's so single-mindedness, and that goes back to the meditation thing. If your focus is on anything other than what's right in front of you, you won't do well. You won't perform well. And I learned that soon enough, where I had days I'd be in the gym, and don't get me wrong, there's times you're training, you're in the gym, and you're rolling, you're sparring, and something else is on your mind. You got to get home, do this, do that. Oh, my wife and I were arguing. I got to go pick up the kids. And next thing you know, you missed what was happening. You catch a left hook upside your head, or somebody's on your back trying to choke you. So I notice I do much better when my focus is on what's right in front of me, that single-mindedness that comes with training martial arts. And if you can stay in that space most of the time, I think you'll have success most of the time.
There is a definite advantage to martial arts in that, which is that if your attention is divided, you get punched in the face.
Yes.
I have 100% been there on a number of occasions. Yeah. It's a great training mechanism.
Yeah.
But let's press on that for a second, because there's a couple of really interesting things that came out of that. One was the idea that meditation can be applied to the middle of a fight. Right? That's something that I think a lot of martial artists understand pretty intuitively, but might not be obvious to somebody listening that doesn't have a rich history in martial arts. So when you say meditation, how did you start with that? Did you just sit down and say, hey, I'm going to concentrate, or was there a particular teaching?
I remember researching it, asking people who have done meditations before and reading a lot, and just jumping. I'm a big believer in just jumping in, right? Like if you'll figure it out. There'll be some bumps and some mistakes along the way and whatnot, but if you get in the water and start swimming, eventually you'll start swimming. And I just remember sitting in the park. I lived in Silver Lake at the time, sitting in the park and just sitting under a tree and crossing my legs and trying to focus on my breath. And I remember a book I read saying a bunch of stuff's going to come into your mind, and think of it as a river. Just recognize that thought and let it float down the river, and then go back to your breath. And that kind of resonated with me. And as hard as it was, I was thinking about everything. Oh, I'll go see my girl later. Oh, I'm gonna have a drink later. Oh, I got to pay that bill later. And I was like, man, I got a lot of noise in my head right now. Or maybe all the time. I don't even know, because I rarely sat down and just focused on my breathing. But eventually, like anything with practice, I got decent at it, where I could have moments of where I was just focusing on my breathing, and not that the noise was a lot quieter. And I think with fighting and meditation, it's a little different. It's not like, I'm not thinking of it like that zenness of just sitting under a tree and my mind being clear. I'm thinking about, but even when I'm breathing, it's a single-mindedness of focus on my breathing. When I'm fighting or playing a sport, it's the single-mindedness of focusing on that task right in front of me, and being aware of the fact that I have to breathe. I have to be aware of my breathing and take deep breaths and stay calm and try to calm my heart rate, because it's chaotic. I mean, your heart rate will go up, and if you can get it down, your endurance will be so much better, your focus will be so much better. And I found out during times of fights and rolls and sparring sessions and competitions, the more I can be aware of that moment of what's happening right now and block everything else out, the more I can do that also with my breathing. And I find my cardio's better, my focus is better, my speed is better, my timing's better, all of it. Yeah. And that just comes with, I think, like anything, like I said earlier, with practice.
Absolutely.
Try, fail,
yeah,
succeed.
Over and over again. That's something that a lot of the folks on the podcast previously have talked about, as well as the link between breath control, focus, and the ability to perform at your peak. Right? That connection between your mind and your body, focused through your breath as a vehicle to get yourself into the space that you need to be in order to bring your best self to bear in a situation, whether that's a fight or whether that's a critical resuscitation or running in the emergency department. Do you have a favorite breathing technique that you do, maybe at the beginning of a match or something like that?
Maybe before. Usually what I'll do is I'll try to take a couple deep breaths, and that could happen right before I get ready to do something, whether it was back in the day of actual live fight, or now more sparring and live rolls. Or I'll find moments within what seems like chaos where I'm in a position where I feel like I'm either out of range, let me take a couple deep breaths, or maybe more in rolling or MMA, I'm in a position where I don't feel too threatened. I could take a couple deep breaths, and I'll say to myself, in my mind, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths, then I'm going to go. One more. Now I'm going to look to advance. And if something happens where that person starts to maybe move prematurely before I was able to get those 3 breaths in, it's fine. I'll find a spot later down the road. And it doesn't mean I stop breathing in between there. Mm-hmm. I'm just not aware of my breathing as much. I'll try to find those moments where I can really, really just get in my head and say, take a couple deep breaths, see what's happening, laser focus in, and then move.
Yeah, and implicit in that is sort of a difference, because I think when you're an absolute beginner in martial arts, you watch people fight and it looks like it's just this constant burn of energy the entire time from start to finish.
I think most of the time it is.
Right.
I think most of the time they're acting on instincts,
mm-hmm.
and whatever their strength is. Maybe they're athletic, maybe they're strong, maybe they're quick, maybe they're big, and they'll use that because that's what maybe they've used in other things that they've had success in. And you'll learn in martial arts, it's good to use all those things, but use them through your technique,
right?
Don't let that be your technique. And I think with most beginners, that's what we'll see is they're relying on just their youth or their strength or their speed. And then with time, if they stick with the sport, they still have that youth, strength, and speed, but now they're using it in a smarter way through their technique.
Mm-hmm.
That's not their technique. Their technique is the technique they learn, and then they use their speed, strength, flexibility, whatever it may be.
Right, and there's also sort of an evolution of understanding, which is that even in the middle of these incredibly tense moments, or these moments of sort of huge output, there's also the space sort of hidden in there in some sense to pause and take that breath.
Yeah.
And understanding that you perform at your best when you are, one, the most calm you can be.
Yes.
Not hit by emotions, not angry,
Yes.
not whatever, just calm and collected. And 2, when you can find that rhythm in yourself between okay, now I need to act. I'm going to throw my entire body into this. Over here, I don't need to act. I'm going to slow down and take a breath.
Yeah. As a coach now, more than a fighter at the stage I'm in my martial art journey, there's a couple things I always tell my guys who are competing. One is try to have a poker face. That poker face shows calm. Even if inside there's chaos happening, you're panicking, you're tired, you're hurt, you're scared, you don't want that to be portrayed to your opponent. Because he sees that he's going to feed off it. It's like a lion who sees blood, right? You want to stay calm, and I also believe that by having that poker face, you're calming yourself inside, even unintentionally, right? And then I also tell them to drive steady. If you're a car, go 75. Don't try to go 100. Don't go 30. Go steady pace of whatever your pace is. Maybe if you're in great shape, your pace is 80. If you're not so great shape, maybe it's 60. But the point is you're staying steady so that way you can go the duration of the task in front of you, right? You're not amazing for 30 seconds and then you have nothing left the rest of the match or the rest of the fight. So stay steady and stay calm. And then you can always turn it up a little bit when you need to, or turn it down a little.
Right, so let's dig into that, or rather let's put ourselves in one of those situations and talk through it. So let's say we're in the middle of a match and the opponent has come up with something we didn't expect, and man, you get hit. You get hit hard.
Right.
And you are a little rocked.
Yep.
You realize you're not deathly injured and you're going to keep going.
Yeah.
How do you coach your fighters to recover in that? And I think that's an important thing, because the analogy to that in the emergency medical world is you're in the middle of a case and something goes completely sideways.
It always does.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does. I mean, if everything went perfect, and sometimes it does, but most of the time, there's a curveball coming your way. The guy catches you with something you didn't see. You had prepared all your training camp for a guy who you thought was heavy with his hands, and you get in, next you know he's trying to wrestle and take you down, right? And you're just like, I wasn't expecting that. And honestly, the mind's an amazing thing. You just have to regroup. You have to tell yourself, I've experienced this before. Maybe it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's not foreign to me. I mean, I know that there's a possibility he can punch or kick me, right? I know there's a possibility he can try to choke me. Maybe I didn't think that's what he was going to do, but I've experienced this before somewhere else in the past. I just have to recollect on that and draw on that and have the confidence. And confidence comes from, obviously, experience, time training, being in situations and realizing that you've been there before. And just say to yourself, look, I can deal with this. And sometimes you get hit, sometimes you get rocked. And like you were saying, if you can, there's getting hurt or getting hit, and you can't do anything about it. You're injured. You gotta check out. Right. That's it. You got the better of me. And there's other times when you're fine. You just gotta tell yourself you're fine.
Okay, so let's shift gears slightly, and let's go back in time, maybe to when you were really a beginner in martial arts, or maybe you can think about somebody that just joined the gym that's a beginner, and you're starting to teach them a couple techniques. They understand a punch, they understand a kick or a takedown. But now they're going to start to apply that in real life, sort of almost full speed. The analogy here to emergency medicine is you've got somebody that understands the dose of a medication, when to give it, but this is maybe the first time that they are facing a live patient that really needs this particular type of treatment. What do you think that martial arts has to say about that? Or how do you give advice to that person who's trying to deploy this knowledge for the first time for real?
I mean, I don't think you could put a price on how important it is to get experience. I show somebody a technique, or somebody learns certain combination, and then they try to make it applicable to a live situation. With time, obviously, they'll start to understand how that all fits together more smoothly. And then I think that's probably experience is the biggest thing. I have had people though who've come in and they don't have much experience and they do really well live. And I've had the opportunity to, having a gym now over 10 years, to see people come and just pick up stuff really, really quickly. Or I show two people the same technique, and neither of them are really any better than the other one, but one performs better than the other one. And what I equated to over kind of my small little case study of watching this over the last decade is his confidence. He believes that he's going to land this combo or this technique, and the other guy's a little unsure. Well, I just learned it might work, it might not work, and he kind of goes in with his tippy toes.
So that's awesome, because there's this idea in there that you can learn a technique equivalently. You can take two people and give them the same tools, but there's something inherent in their own mindset about how they apply it under pressure, even the very first time, that dictates that.
Yeah.
Now, do you think that idea of confidence in terms of your first attempt at something, do you think that is that inherent to the person? Is that something about how they've trained before that, or where do you think that comes from?
I think if I had to guess, it's probably inherent to the person. Maybe they've had success in other things they've done in life, whether it was martial arts or just college or with girls or with men or with businesses, and they've had success in more times than not. So they just expect to have success in this as well. Or maybe they have a childhood where their parents instilled confidence in them and what they were going to do, they were going to do well in. Speaking for myself, that wasn't my childhood. My childhood was that you can't do this, you can't do that, blah, blah, blah. So I had to learn more through trial and error. I went in more like the guy on the tippy toes and didn't succeed, but I was persistent. I failed, but you know what? That fuels me to go again and go. I was that guy where you get knocked down and get back up, knock me back down, get back up, knock me down, get back up. So eventually, I wasn't getting knocked down as much. But I've seen other people come in and they don't have to go through that for whatever reason. They're more confident. They developed the mind power to believe in themselves enough to have success more than failures. And I think they both build characters in different ways. And I think they both get to where you want to go. It's just a different path.
Right. Wherever you start from, you have the ability to improve yourself and to keep driving forward and to get better at acting under pressure. It's just sort of a personal understanding of sort of where you are and the path it's going to take you to get to that.
And but both have to have the determination to want to succeed in it. Because you could very easily be like, yeah, this was easy. I landed that combination, that technique. Wasn't that hard? Whatever, I'll move on to the next thing. Or you could be that guy, I did really bad. I failed. In my mind, maybe this isn't for me. So both those people have to have the desire and to want to be good at this and even better at it, because you can always get better. That's the amazing thing about martial arts in general, and a lot of things in life in general, is you never really reach the ceiling. And if you think you do, you look up and you realize the ceiling is way higher than you thought it was. I've been doing it, like I said, over 30 years, and it boggles my mind how much I don't know. And I think I've forgotten more than most people ever learn about martial arts. Yet there's so much more for me to continue on this journey, and that's why people are, how long are you going to keep training? As long as my body will let me train, I'm going to keep training. And even then, when my body doesn't let me train, I'll probably still continue to study the sport and grow.
Absolutely, yeah. I remember distinctly my karate instructor that I grew up with, who was like a second dad to me, and hopefully we're going to get him on the podcast sometime soon, telling me that and saying, hey, like, do you think that just because you wear this black piece of cloth around your waist, that you have this black belt, that you think everything is done? You think you've hit the pinnacle of this? And the answer is, of course, no, that there is no pinnacle, right? There's this quote from Seneca that goes, as long as you live, keep learning how to live, right? As long as you are alive, you keep pushing and you keep growing at that. And I think that one of the beautiful things about trying to do something under pressure, whether that's emergency care or kickboxing or whatever, is that it forces you to find those areas in yourself that you can improve. You can constantly, when you have that pressure, you use it like a hammer. You find those little faults and you can keep driving forward to that next step for it.
Agreed. It's funny for me too, because a couple of the martial arts I studied were martial arts that didn't do promotions. The original Kung Fu style I did, my first instructor, old Chinese guy, was like, belt good to hold up your pants. And that was it. That's what he said. Because the first thing I asked was, what's, you get belts? He's like, yeah, to hold your pants. That's it. And then Muay Thai, traditionally, they don't give promotions. You train until you're good. And then you keep training to be better. And there's nothing wrong with the ranking systems. Jiu-Jitsu obviously has a ranking system. And there's something to be said, too, about striving towards something. But if you can remove that I guess, I don't know what the word is, that materialistic thing of wanting to get a belt, wanting to get promotion, and just want to get better, there's something to be said about that, too, that I think reflects back to a little bit more of a Zen type of mentality of your cup's never full, Definitely. And I think it's a little different for depending on if you're a kid too, right? Kids sometimes need that external framework in order to see advancement a little better. But I think as you're an adult, then it doesn't matter, right? You're in there to make yourself a better human being. To really hammer on yourself and get yourself in the shape that you want to be into. And I think even with kids though, with kids, like we teach a kids class over there, and we don't have a ranking system for the kids. I think it's kind of important to install in them, or instill in them, that you're on this journey, and yes, you'll get some accolades along the way, but be in this journey to be a better person, to be a better martial artist, and just overall better, and not based on just trying to get to the next prize, the next prize, the next prize.
And so along that line, what's your advice then to somebody who is starting out and who maybe comes from the tiptoe camp, for lack of a better word, right? They're not somebody who has the most confidence at the beginning, but they really want it. They want to get better. What's your advice to them about starting out in something like martial arts? If it's not go for a belt, if it's not go for an external accomplishment, what should they be doing?
I mean, everybody's got their own personal journey they're on and why they're doing martial arts or why they do whatever they do in their life. And I think they have to first find the martial art that they like, because there's so many different types of art. People come in the gym all the time and it's like, what's the best martial art? Which martial art should I do? And like, you need to find the one you like, because if you like it, you'll go every day or every other day. But if you're doing it because you think that's the one that's going to make you the baddest person on the planet, or you're going to be the toughest, then you don't like it, you won't stick with it long term. So you find the one that you love. Like anything in life, you find what you enjoy doing, and it's not an effort to want to go to the gym and to train. But for the person, I guess, that comes in is a little lacking maybe confidence or athletic ability, maybe isn't the best athlete. Look, everybody, I tell this to each person. I say, we're all on our own journey. You do what you can do now, and with time, that will expand. You'll do more, and you'll do more. And don't look at the next guy and be like, compare yourself to him, because he's on his own journey or she's on her own journey, and they're starting from a different place than where you were starting, and maybe they got other things going on that you don't see, and they're working through. And if you're not trying to be a professional fighter and you're doing this just for whatever reason, to get in shape, to build confidence, to have fun, community, those are your answers. And if you're getting those things from the training, then you're winning. You're already winning. Whether you're getting belts, or whether you're winning competitions, or whether you're just leaving the gym feeling empowered. Those are things that hopefully you can take with you into other aspects of your life.
Empowered and slightly bruised.
Yeah. Slightly bruised, yeah.
Exactly.
Nothing wrong with getting a little banged up.
No, it's perfect. It's really good for you. There's this great quote by Miyamoto Musashi, the Japanese swordsman and author of the Book of Five Rings, that I really love. And it goes, "The purpose of today's training is to defeat yesterday's understanding."
That's
right?
Great.
And the idea that we're in this every day to get better and to compete with ourselves to get better. And I think that's something I work with a lot with the doctors that I'm training, and I'm lucky enough to be part of their training, which is to say, hey, look, you're not supposed to be perfect in one day. Wherever you start from, you're going to get better.
Yeah.
And your job is every patient you see, every resuscitation you work on, every time you throw yourself under that pressure is to get better than you were yesterday at it.
For sure.
But to do that consciously. And that's something I've always loved about my background in the martial arts, and what a gift that was for me, especially as a younger person, is this idea that you are responsible for your own growth and development and your own training.
Yeah.
And if you do it, you see the results. And if you don't do it, you see the results.
Correct.
There's no faking whether or not you did your push-ups that day.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Right? Your hands are either up or they aren't.
Yeah. You can't fake the funk.
Yeah. Can't fake the funk.
No.
Yeah. Right on. Right on. I'm going to start saying that at work. I like that a lot. So let's flash forward in time a little bit.
Okay.
So now you are the owner of UPRISE MMA, which is a wonderful gym that I'm super lucky to train at, and here in Mar Vista in Los Angeles, California. And you are responsible in some sense for the growth of lots of people in their careers in martial arts and their understanding of their own journeys. And at the same time, you're still training yourself. You and I trained this morning.
Yep.
You won, which I'll just put that in the record. How do you continue your own growth, even as you're also sort of helping all these other people to grow at the same time?
Like I said earlier, I always feel there's something to learn, and I'm fortunate enough to train my jiu-jitsu under Professor Gustavo Gasparin, who I've been fortunate enough to work with for about almost 10 years now. So I'm excited to continue to grow as a jiu-jitsu practitioner under Professor Gustavo. The gym is a lot of youthful energy, and I feed off of that, and that kind of keeps me training. And it's a little bit of pride too. I want to see if I can get that 22-year-old and arm bar him or choke him or sweep him or something. There's a little pride there. See if I still got it.
Yeah, definitely. That's such an important idea, that even if you are really a master of your craft, you are still constantly also learning.
Yeah.
Right? You are still learning, and you go out and you try to seek other people that are masters in something that is maybe a little different than what you do, and you go out there and you drill that thing.
Yeah.
And that's certainly the same in medicine as well, right? You can be, an expert at your field, and there's still so much medicine to learn and so much ability to think about how to apply the next thing. And all the time you're running into cases that you've never seen before, right? And part of the joy of that life path is understanding that continuing to learn and continuing to grow is part of your mission.
Yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of this that you got really into reading philosophy when you were younger.
Yeah.
What's your mental training like these days? Are you still reading philosophy? I know the bookcase in the gym has a lot of good stuff on it. But
I made it a point, and I talk about this frequently, is finding time to get back to that place of reading, writing, and being creative outside of my martial art world. And that's something I continue to work on, and continue to try to find time to do or make time to do. It's all about just making the time. There's time to be found. You just have to make the effort to find it. But I was going to say something too about, you're asking me, you were saying how you find somebody who's, teaches you something, maybe they're an expert in this. I open myself up to learning even from the people who in my gym and in life who maybe aren't experts in what they're doing. Maybe they're I've been doing martial arts like I said over 30 years. Maybe they've been doing it for 6 months or a year. Sometimes I'm learning from their mistakes. Sometimes I'm learning because they don't know any better and they're doing something. I'm like, wow, I never thought about that, but that actually works. And I open myself up to that. And as you know, being a jiu-jitsu practitioner now, the leg lock game's a big thing. And that wasn't something that was super popular 10, 15 years ago. It's become the in thing the last few years. And there's guys in the gym who are much lower level belts than I am that are very good at it, and I pick their brains. They're watching videos all the time. And I don't want to be that guy who's, because I own the gym, I can't have this white belt or blue belt show me something. No, I want to get better. And if you know something that I don't know, show it to me. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. That attitude of learning from everybody is super important.
Super important.
Super important. I'm really lucky to get a chance to work with an amazing group of residents who are doctors and who are finishing their emergency training, and I learn from them constantly. They are awesome, in part because they're always coming up with these ideas that are totally out of the box that I learn to think in, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm not sure why that does that. Let's go figure that out.
Yeah, and that's okay too to not know.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
People sometimes think you should have all the answers, and you got to say to yourself, I don't. It's okay, but I'll find out, or I'll try to find out, and I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, and that idea that we're on this journey together, and that journey is to be the best version of ourselves that we can put together.
Yeah.
So I want to bring us back to something we talked about at the beginning of this, which was you were talking about how one of the jobs of a martial artist, of a fighter, was to find calm in the center of a really chaotic situation.
Yeah.
And that's obviously something that has implications for a variety of fields.
Yeah.
How do you teach people how to do that, or how do you think about that? What's your advice for somebody to find calm in the middle of chaos?
Yeah. Again, experience is, I think, paramount, but I've told many students who were in a bad situation or a chaotic situation that, look, by panicking, the situation is not going to become less chaotic. He's still trying to choke you. He's still trying to break your arm. He's still trying to punch you or kick you or take you down. The only difference is how you're reacting to it. Do you think he's going to abandon ship because he sees you're panicking? No, if anything, he's going to fuel off that, or he's going to realize you're not really focused. You're thinking about something else because you're panicking, you're freaking out, you're starting to breathe heavy. So I say, look, he's on your back. He's going to stay on your back, whether you stay calm or don't stay calm. So you'll have a better chance of escaping or succeeding or getting to the next progression if you can stay calm and focus and breathe and see what your next step is. And it's hard to do that when you're freaking out. So I think the main point I'm trying to make is the situation is not going to change whether you're calm or whether you're panicked. It's still a situation that has to be addressed. Somewhere along the line, things got chaotic, crazy. It didn't go the way you thought it was going to go, and you have to address that. And you can address it calm, or you can address it in a frantic state. And over experience, I saw people that tend to do the best or do well or handle the situation or escape the situation were the ones that were able to stay calm. Sometimes you have to be alert. Sometimes you have to be ready to go, and panic. Maybe it heightens your senses, and it makes you power through something or react in a way you wouldn't have reacted if you were super calm. Right? This is a problem. I can't be too calm. I can't be too relaxed there. I know I might be contradicting myself here, but I think it's finding that balance between calm and knowing when to put your foot on the pedal and go a little bit, and like, we got to step this up or it's going to get worse. And it will get worse if you don't react.
Totally. And there's that Buddhist concept of like thinking about like a guitar string, right? Where if it's too loose, you don't get a note out of it.
Correct.
But if it's too tight, the string breaks. And
yeah.
so the idea is, how do you keep that calm? How do you keep the string at the right amount of tension?
Yeah.
And I agree with you. I think a lot of that is practice, not just practice in general, but practice under pressure.
Yes.
Practice putting yourself in pressured situations, right? There's a reason that when we learn techniques, okay, you learn it first yourself, you hit a bag, and the bag doesn't hit back, right? And then you start learning to apply that technique in more and more rounds with your teammates and live rounds where you're really going hard and you're really going fast, right? The idea is you don't want to rely on that technique for the first time when you're in a live match against a real opponent. You want to train it under pressure.
Right. It's progressions. In a perfect world, you go from learning the technique to applying the technique in a controlled situation, to applying the technique in a situation where maybe people are going 40% speed and power, to applying the technique or skills in a live situation where people are going as fast or as hard as they want. That's not always the case, but that's kind of the ideal setting of how to get that experience that's needed.
Almost word for word identical to what Dr. Andrea Austin said in episode 3 when she was talking about how she trains her folks in the Navy Trauma Training Center, which is that you try to make people as good as you possibly can in their own techniques, in their own lane, and then you throw them under pressure gradually and you see what happens. And the whole idea behind that system is to put people through the paces in a lower stakes environment until they can start seeing what breaks under pressure.
Agreed.
And then going back and repairing that ahead of time.
I had a student once who I was getting ready for a fight, and this was maybe a few years back. I was sparring a little bit more than I do now, Muay Thai, and kicking his leg super hard. And after the sparring session, one of the other students was watching. Was like, why were you kicking him so hard? And I said, because I don't want the first time he gets kicked hard to be in the ring. I want him to already have had that experience of what it feels like, solid leg kick. So when it happens in the ring, and it's going to happen, he's not like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that. Don't know how to react to that. My focus is now on my throbbing leg instead of the punches that are coming my way. So if I can give them a little dose of what's coming in a controlled environment, then I think when it does actually happen, they're not so like, what's going on.
I remember distinctly my karate instructor growing up telling me the exact same thing after he had kicked me rather hard. In retrospect, it makes more sense than it did at that moment.
Yeah.
But I completely agree with you as a concept in general. Not that we should be punching our learners over and over again.
Correct.
But that you should put people in situations where you design them such that they start breaking down a little bit, because it's only in that breakdown that they're able to determine what they need to build back up next.
Agreed. And I think a good coach or a good teacher knows what level, what velocity, what power they need to do to get them to where they need to go without hopefully injuring them or making them lose confidence.
Right.
Because you could beat somebody down to a point where it's counterproductive now. They've lost confidence in their abilities because they're like, oh man, I just got mopped. Where, you want to, it's a fine line of breaking them down a little bit to build them back up.
Mm-hmm. Right, which I'm thinking again about our sparring sessions today where you mopped the floor with me, and I'm quite appreciative of that. Yes.
You're being too kind.
There's a link here, I think, also to a quote that's on the wall of our gym here.
Yes.
And I don't know if you can tell folks about that.
Yeah, it's a Greek quote. One of my favorite authors, Nikos Kazantzakis, he's a Cretan author from Greece, the island of Crete, and it says in Greek, "Δεν οπίσω τίποτα, δεν φοβάμαι τίποτα, είμαι ελεύθερος," which translates loosely to, I hope for nothing, I fear nothing, I am free. And I wrote it on the wall here at the gym because I thought it's kind of, I don't want martial arts just to be, like we said earlier, punching, kicking, choking. I want it to be kind of a whole lifestyle. Not that you should never hope for nothing or wish for anything, but if that is your main focus, you're always hoping for things, wishing for things, you're missing the big picture. And we were talking earlier about how life is short. Like Cat Stevens said, you're only dancing on this earth for a short while. It's just my opinion that if the focus should be more on the moment and living freely, whatever that is for each person, as opposed to hoping and wishing and wanting things all the time.
Absolutely. That is an awesome quote. And it reminds me a lot of this idea from Marcus Aurelius that just says, the closer a person is to a calm mind, the closer they are to strength, right?
Yes.
That idea that
Very
the
cool.
more still you are, the more free and the more strong you are to live your own version of life.
Agreed. Yeah, there's something to be said about powerful quotes and kind of trying to incorporate them into your life. And yeah, I think we've gotten away a little bit from reading and stuff like that. Maybe I'm just sounding my age now, but it's not like my parents back in the day telling me, you guys don't do this anymore, and I'm that guy. But yeah, there's something to be said about great books, great authors, great quotes, and learning from the people who came before us.
Absolutely. Well, Coach, I want to be mindful of our time here, so I'm going to summarize for 1 second what we talked about and then sort of take us towards the end. And I think what we covered today is the idea of finding calm in the middle of chaos, whether that chaos comes from a fight or from an emergency situation, of understanding about how to train and how to train others to seek that out. And that is a slow progression of power and a slow progression of pressure to where you find the point where you start to break and then build yourself back up. And then the idea of finding your own path through things, of taking responsibility for your own training and your own life, and understanding that you're always a student, you're always a learner, no matter where you are in this arc. As you think about that, do you have any parting wisdom, any last thoughts about this? And or is there anybody else that you'd want to see sort of interviewed on a podcast like this about thinking under pressure?
Cool. Yeah. I mean, I think for me, I'd love to hear somebody talk about diet. Because, we've spent the last hour or so talking about performing under pressure. And, for myself, being somebody who's maybe wrestling on the mat, I could talk till I'm blue in the face about staying calm, but I also need energy to be able to perform well. And so I've been really curious lately about, the proper food that's needed to perform at a high level, mentally and physically, whether it's a plant-based diet, a meat-based diet, or a combination of the two. How, is it even necessary to be loaded up on carbs to be able to perform at that type of level? And if you're performing well, then you could focus, or is it one or the other, or can it be both? So I'd be kind of curious about that. But yeah, this was a blast for me. I love talking about this stuff. I love getting into the concepts of like I said earlier, the yin and the yang, the physical and the mental aspects. It's not, for me, it's never been one or the other. It's always been both. The cup for me is only half full if I'm just working out and doing physical things, but I'm not keeping my mind sharp and my body sharp and my spirit right. So it was a pleasure, man. I love rolling with you on the mat, and now I love rapping with you about this kind of stuff.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. Coach, thank you so much for being a part of this.
Blast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Emergency Mind podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, but more importantly, I hope you found something in there that you can use next time you find yourself in the middle of an emergency. To learn more about what we talked about in this episode and about building your emergency mind in general, head over to our website at emergencymind.com.